So thanks to Michelle for inviting me. And also I commend the university for looking at futures and foresight. Next. So I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to go through them very quickly, but I have underlined the key point whenever there's a new topic. So hopefully that will help people follow this. And Michelle later can give my PowerPoint to people if they would like that. So first I will go over a few characteristics of a futurist perspective, how futurists view change. Secondly, I will look at themes from my forthcoming book called Options for Future Human Evolution, Cutting Edge Issues for Humanity and the World, which covers 5 key areas. It looks at technology, Earth crises, civilizations of the world coming together, all interacting, the needed evolution of consciousness, and some people leaving the Earth to go to space. And then I will sum up. I hope I will have time to cover some futures, key futures organizations and a few characteristics of each. Okay, so just quickly, most of you maybe know future studies as a field, or it may be new to you, but it's a strange field because it hasn't yet happened. And the key point here is futurists look at trends and alternative futures, but they do not claim to predict the future. They say there are many alternative futures, possible, probable, preferable, and the goal is to make preferable futures become more probable. And there's also increasing uncertainty today. Next. So we're dealing in a period of accelerating change on the planet. Almost every area of our life is going through major changes. And the big question for me also is, can humanity come together across all our cultural and other differences so that we can cooperate to solve many of the very pressing issues facing the world today? Next. So a couple of key futures methodologies of many that there are: trend extrapolation, where you look at trends and see if they're going in the direction you want or not. And if not, then you need to change your behavior, because they always say, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always gotten. So another is scenarios that Sylvia mentioned, where you look at different possible initial conditions and what are the sequence of events that could follow from that. But you never just do one scenario, because futurists don't believe there's just one future. By our taking action in the world, we can change the future and the outcomes that we're creating. Next. Futurists also tend to look at things from a big picture systems point of view, from dynamic interdependent systems thinking. And so they're trying to help people recontextualize how they look at problems so they'll see opportunities in change and be empowered to initiate change that they weren't before. And also with the power to bring changes in the present. Next. Okay, so my forthcoming book, I gave you the title, but the background is Alvin Toffler's famous book, The Third Wave, where he hypothesized that after hunting and gathering, people settled in agricultural communities. Then we later had the Industrial Revolution. Then we had what he called post-industrial, but people call the information age. But what my book is hypothesizing is that we are moving into a whole new age, because there's so much change happening and so many new technologies and issues in all kinds of different areas that I'll quickly go over. Next. Okay, so we're entering a whole new age, and I'm going to look quickly at least 12 new technologies beyond just the traditional computers, telecommunications of the information age, that are all going to have and are having profound effects. And the framework is that when you create new technologies, this restructures jobs and the economy, and then from there it restructures all of our societal institutions, and then finally even our thinking. So next. Am I going too fast, or is it okay, Michelle? Hopefully. All right. Next, some of these technologies that I'm looking at are, there's different versions of transhumanism. These are a particular group of futurists who are trying to merge with a machine to create physical immortality for themselves and conquer aging eventually. And they can be either upload your consciousness in a computer chip of Ray Kurzweil, or just augment body parts as they wear out. And the third version is that we become cyborgs, so that we're a mixture of the machine and our own biological bodies. Next. Other technologies today are info technologies of artificial intelligence and robotics. These are huge issues because robots can replace human jobs, and that affects the future economy. But the other thing is artificial intelligence. Will it become super intelligent and then challenge our existence and so on? So there's huge issues I could go into on each of these. I can only just briefly mention they're all happening. In the biotech area, you have CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing. You have nanotechnology, where you go into the atomic structure, molecular structure of something, and could eventually, if that's mastered, be able to create anything from scratch that was in scarce supply. And then synthetic biology, creating actually synthetic biology. Then the other info technologies are the future of the internet, where you create sensors everywhere on your body, in your environment, so everything becomes automatically interconnected in real time. And then virtual and augmented reality, where virtual reality, you create an alternative reality that you can go into and visit and participate in. Or augmented reality, you impose an image, a virtual image on top of a regular everyday reality. And then economic job impacts of many of these technologies, but it's especially robotics, replacing factory workers on the assembly line, or nanotechnology, if it's mastered in one version, would be able to create anything from scratch, but we don't have that yet. And then 3D, 4D printing, where you can in a local place print anything you need cheaply, and it would also have a big economic impact. Next. And then also many green technologies are really important today with climate change, renewable energy shifting to that, and recycling, code generation, et cetera, self-driving cars, electronic cars, so that we don't keep polluting the environment. And also that we could share cars rather than just have everyone have their own car. You could have carpools that would be shared and be also automatic self-driving. And then there's many technologies to support the Paris Climate Agreement. I'm happy to say the US under Biden has finally rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement and all the other UN Sustainable Development Goals. And then there are also space technologies, which build on computers, telecommunications, information age robotics, but add space capsules, reusable rockets so that you reduce cost, rovers on Mars or the moon, and creating future habitats for people. And there's also increasing overlap of information technologies and biotechnologies. Next. Next, okay. Yeah, so the key point here about jobs and the economy is, in the past, when we went from, say, the agricultural to the industrial age, the old jobs in the old age were, decreased, but new jobs were created. So the big question today, I think, is whether automation and robotics, if that will still be true. So are we creating enough new jobs? And if not, we're going to have to deal with UBI, or universal basic income, for people, because it won't be sustainable for society if too many people are unemployed. And then there's another issue right now, it happening in the US, but other places, is there may be a lot of jobs if we create all kinds of new infrastructure to modernize it. At least where in the US, we need great infrastructure rebuilding, and that could create a lot of new jobs. Okay, next. Okay, the Earth is in crisis in the Anthropocene age, which means it's characterized by human dominance of the Earth. So animals in the wild come into human spaces, and humans go into places where animals were. But the problem is now we have, how do we bring humanity together to deal with climate change and all these Earth crises? Next. So I just list a bunch of Earth challenges, global warming, et cetera. How do we deal with scarce resources, finite resources, but more and more people? Dealing with needing to change to renewable energy, environmental pollution, water quality is another huge issue. And also many people think in a sixth mass extinction of species on the planet, and we don't begin to know the full effects of that because species build on each other in an ecosystem. Next. So these are some proposed solutions for dealing with Earth crises, the Paris Climate Agreement, UN Sustainable Development Goals, and so on. I'm going to green technologies, but also interdependent whole systems thinking is critical. If we don't see that the world is interdependent and come together to solve our problems, we're not going to be able to do it either. So that's very important. And eco-spirituality, creating eco-civilizations where eco values are prominent and so on. And of course, promoting action. Next. Okay, the next third area I'm looking at in my book is increasing effects of all the different cultures and civilizations of the world coming together and interacting, and what are positive tools for doing that. And again, if we have an interdependent worldview, that will help a lot. There's many global declarations have come out on common values that countries around the world support. But we need to find ways to have unity in diversity. So we honor our diverse cultures and traditions, but we also see that we're interdependent within the evolving whole systems context. And then there's many issues today that require global cooperation. We can't do it as one country or one discipline or so on. So nuclear arms race, global warming and climate change, global pandemics, which we're still in the middle of, this current one, cybersecurity and cyber hacking. And I think another big issue today is there's really a global battle contest going on between democracy and democratic values versus more autocratic values. Next. So as I said, we have right-wing nationalist populist movements in many countries. I think that's true in France. It's definitely been true in the United States under Trump and Trumpists today, something I'm quite concerned about. But there are tools, there are fields of intercultural communication, there's fields of interfaith dialogue, there's fields of peace and conflict resolution and negotiation and so on. All these give us tools about how to interact with cultural diversity in more positive ways and find areas of common ground. And I've already mentioned about the democracy issue. If you want peaceful societies too, you have to also deal with including all groups of people in social justice questions. Next. Okay, there's spiral dynamics. I don't have time to go into it, but this is a whole field that looks at how different cultures and civilizations have different underlying value systems that you can evolve through, and that ultimately you want to get to an integral approach where there's value in each perspective, but you can bring people together. And I will just, I don't have time to go into it, but it's a very interesting area. Next. Okay, we also, I would just argue, need an evolution of human consciousness and thinking and worldviews if we want to solve all these problems facing the world today. And I mentioned a number of them already. But we need to get, in Western cultures, we tend to have this worldview that everything is separate from each other. It's like Newtonian physics. And yet we have to get back. We can still have diversity, but we have to see that all that diversity is interdependent and co-evolving within an interdependent system as a mindset that we need if we want to solve global problems today. There's many other, I'm also looking at a number of different perspectives about how consciousness evolves from different scientific, spiritual, cultural, civilizational perspectives, but in the book, but not now. Okay, next. And the last area is space exploration, where humans are beginning to leave our home planet Earth and to explore our solar system and galaxy and universe beyond. And then, so there's different arguments. There's negative and positive arguments why we should go to space. Negative is that if we destroy life on Earth through climate change or nuclear war or an asteroid hits the Earth or whatever, we will have some humans in space off the Earth to preserve or prolong, to have the human species survive. But there's also very positive arguments, which are that it's part of the human spirit to explore the unknown, and space is certainly, some people would call, the final frontier. And many countries have space programs today, and some of them, it's interesting also, there's also private space programs. You know, government programs, you have to be two-way missions to the moon or Mars to bring the people home. But there are some people who want to go to Mars on a one-way mission where they would just, that would be it. Next. Another big question about space is, are we alone in the universe, or is the universe populated with life? And there's big debates about that, and it's controversial, but very interesting. And we can ask if science fiction is an intuition of things to come, because it's all about humans interacting with other so-called alien extraterrestrial species. Next. So what's interesting is there's a hypothesis about civilizations that evolved to become what's called technological civilizations, where they have advanced enough technology that they can start to leave their home planet to explore their local solar system and the universe beyond. That at that critical point, that if they have not also evolved their consciousness and thinking so that they, beyond being overly aggressive, you know, because then they can turn that technology against other members of their own species and then destroy all of them. And then in the process, never become a technological civilization, in a spacefaring technological civilization. So I would say that's exactly where humanity is today on the Earth. And that's why it's so critical we also evolve our thinking and consciousness. And but you can also hypothesize that there may be civilizations popping up throughout the whole universe at different time periods that become technological and have to deal with this issue. Next. So my conclusions are that we are living in a period of massive accelerating change on the planet, impacting off almost all areas of our life, that this is causing anxiety and concern for many people, and that futurists have a particular role to help people understand change, see what's driving change, see opportunities in change, and encourage people to be creative and take action to deal with all this change in positive ways. Next. So we need to foster conscious, creative, responsible, self-aware action in the world, and including in an age with a lot of uncertainty. And universities like Catholic University of Lille are playing a very important role by also fostering future studies within their university for students. Next. Okay, now the last section, I'm just going to look at quickly at different futures organizations today, and I've looked at their names, when they got founded, what their key missions are. Many people are members of more than one of these, so let me just go through some of these. And again, if you get the PowerPoint from Michelle, you can see a bit more. You can go over this in more detail. So one is the World Future Society, the oldest organization. It was founded in 1966 by Ed Cornish, a journalist, and had annual conferences every year. But the current membership is under Julie Friedman Steele in Chicago, and there are members from 82 countries. And they do have an interesting mission for their visionary members, which is to imagine how we would transfer from a type 0 on the Kardashev scale type civilization that we currently are, to a type 1 civilization in the Kardashev scale. There's a type 1, 2, 3 based on how much energy in the universe you can corral for your own interests. Okay, then the next one, the World Future Studies Federation was founded in 1973 by Europeans who also did not want to be North America dominated. And then during the Cold War, they reached out very much to people in the former Soviet Union, now Russia, Eastern Europe, and so on, as well as countries. We had members from China, many countries. It was great to meet people from all over the world. And it's affiliated with UNESCO, and it tends to focus on futures research. And it will have its 50th anniversary in 2023. And they have a conference coming up this October in Berlin, Germany, which I think will be both in person and online. Next. The Association of Professional Futurists, APF, is an outgrowth of the Future Studies program at the University of Houston in Clear Lake, Texas. And it focuses especially on futures consulting for its students. They've published a knowledge base of Future Studies 2020. They have an annual Futures Festival. They also have started something, I think in 2020, called First Fridays of the month, where they have a webinar on a particular topic by someone on a futures topic. They have annual conferences dealing with skills, especially for professional futurists and foresight professional, including consulting. And they just had a Zoom conference June 1st to 3rd on Beyond Uncertainty, although many futurists would say we're not beyond uncertainty, that uncertainty is part of life today. Next. Anticipation is another recent group that's developed, and there was big debates about what's the difference between anticipation and future studies. But the main idea, that one of the goals they have is to expand futures type thinking to anticipate the future in many different disciplines, say in a university, not beyond the ones that futures tend to usually come from. And so they're trying to create anticipatory thinking across the board in many areas. They're also affiliated with UNESCO. They have appointed a few anticipation chairs at different universities. They also hold global conferences every 2 years in different cities, usually in Europe so far. Their past conferences have been in Trento, Italy, London, and Oslo, Norway. I believe this year they postponed because of COVID a conference this year. Next. But you know, many people that participate in any of these conferences go to many of the other ones. So, you know, there's a whole futures community where everybody knows each other and we run into each other at all these different types of events. The Finland Futures Research Center is another interesting group. There's a lot of futurists who've always been coming out of Finland. They started this research center in 1992 by 3 universities in Turku, Finland. They're very transdisciplinary in their approach and global. They have an annual conference on a different theme each year and participating. It occurs in different Finnish cities. It's open to futurists from any country to apply to present. And they just had a June 8th, 9th Zoom conference on learning futures and futures of learning. And their June 2020 conference will be on futures of health and well-being. Next. And finally, the Millennium Project has been around for a while now. It started in 1996, same as the World Future Society. No, excuse me, that's wrong, 1996. And it started under American University for the American Council for the UN University, but it's now independent. It has 68 different nodes in different countries around the world with people and institutes in each node from that country. And they sort of monitor global local perspectives on 15 global challenges that they look at every year. And they publish an annual State of the Future report that is used in many different universities and places because it provides an up-to-date report on what people are learning in different countries. And there's also a State of the Future index called SOFI. And so they did start something called a Global Futures Day on March 1st each year. So that was the idea, to create a 24-hour round the world conversation on futures starting on March 1st each year. So that's 8 years. Next. So we're wrapping up here, but the conclusion is that many futurists and foresight professionals belong to different organizations and attend different conferences. The COVID-19 global pandemic, you know, led to efforts to go online with Zoom, but this is connecting people is very important. And then what's the last? I think there might be one more thing here. Next. I think we're running out of time. I would just finish up by, this is very interesting to me, is that today universities, you know, traditionally are made up of many different disciplines and schools. But the interesting thing about future studies and foresight is that we're looking at the interaction of change in many different areas. And so we can't solve many of the problems facing the world today from the point of view of one country only or the perspective of one discipline only. So we need to bring people together in teams from different disciplines to address a number of global problems today. And so the university, you know, it's an interesting challenge for universities how to create teams of people from different disciplines to focus on global issues. Okay, next. So I've finished. I just say thank you very much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. I did visit your university in 2014. I'll be happy to come back and present a much more detailed presentation if anyone would like in the future. And thank you so much.